No.
Can I ask you to start?
You could try.
Please start.
Okay. If you insist, I'll speak for a minute or two. Srila Prabhupada. So the last time I saw Srila Prabhupada was November 14th, 1977.
Oh.
I hadn't come to India before that, and I kept poking Baudak, the president. When am I going to India? Sankirtan's board, you're supposed to go every Mayapur festival. Oh, no, you gotta get out there. So he said, Prabhupada's really sick, and he sent Partha, Uttama, and Kripanidhi to Vrindavan to chant for him. So that was the last time. But I went down to Portland, Oregon in 72 June with at that time many devotees were joining, so there was Dharma there and Yashomati, who lives here, and many devotees. Of course, devotees came from all over the continent to see Srila Prabhupada. So that was the first time I saw Srila Prabhupada was in Portland, Oregon, and Donavir was the temple president at the time, and he was Donavir Das Adhikari. And, very extroverted person and so on. So some of the devotee Prabhupada was giving first canto, Krishna departs for Dwarka. And there was lots of descriptions of Maharaj Yudhisthira ruling the world. And Prabhupada, so he was talking about the leading politicians and how unqualified they were. And he would go for a morning walk in a nearby park. And he'd always bring up the scientists, what is Mr. Frog saying today? So that's actually the only morning walk I went with Prabhupada. So he was very grave. When he came to the airport, he was very grave. And he was trying to get us to distribute more books. At that time, we were doing Harinam, Sankirtan. Mahatma was the president of Vancouver at the time. And we would go out for 7 or 8 hours, chant, and then distribute BTGs for 25 cents. And like that. So it was very grassroots kind of beginnings.
Temple wasn't open? Was it already open and functioning?
In Vancouver?
No. You were talking about Vancouver. You were talking about Oregon. I thought.
Well, in Portland, devotees were going out. They had Jonathan had rented the usual kind of a house near downtown, a more colonial-looking house, the older homes, character homes, and near downtown Portland. And when devotees went out during Prabhupada's arrival there, when he was there for a few days, they got arrested. And they were put in jail for chanting Hare Krishna. So I remember Prabhupada, where are the devotees? There was quite a few of them. Gokulananda. Yeah, he was arrested and he was supposed to take, I think, second initiation by then, I believe, or first, I can't remember. And Prabhupada started really speaking in an annoyed way that, these are religious boys. They're simply going out, chanting the holy names. Why are they being harassed and so on? Anyway, the judge threw it out, but they got to sleep in jail overnight and fasting. And then the judge, when the police, when they brought the devotees up before the judge, he just, chastised the police and said, you're harassing these young fellows. So Prabhupada wasn't very happy about that, but he was stressing that we have to distribute books, his books more, and that it was a Brihad Madanga on it. So then we were starting trying to figure out how we're going to distribute these books. And he emphasized that the books have to go out. Harinam is nice, but the Brihad Madanga is a bigger. We put more emphasis on that, so that was my beginning experience.
And Hare Krishna.
So you're on the other side of the coast, this other side of the continent. So.
I was on the other side. Yeah. Okay, what I think of Prabhupada's disappearance day, so I was telling devotees earlier, it's kind of for me it was, or maybe I was telling them yesterday, it took me years before I could observe it.
Oh, really? It was too emotional?
I just couldn't put together celebrate disappearance. Those two words just somehow, I couldn't. Although Prabhupada, there's his instructions. He said it. He's that famous lecture he gave on Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's disappearance day, about how the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, and that there's no appearance and disappearance, or the sun is always in the sky. It just appears to our vision and disappears from our vision, and we don't lament for the disappearance of the sun because the sun's always in the sky. And it's just because we've lost our vision of the sun. In the same way, the pure devotee of the Lord is always with Krishna. So there's no lamentation for the pure devotee. We celebrate because he's gone back to Krishna.
Yeah.
I remember I read it once. I think it was in Nanda's book, Blazing Sadhus. And he was relating how when he first went to India, he was staying in Gaudiya Math, Srila Sridhar Maharaj's Math, because there was no place to stay there. There was no temple yet. And he was once there in the Math when Sridhar Maharaj was having his Vyasa Puja. And Sridhar Maharaj was, he quoted him as saying in his talk, he said, the only reason why I'm sitting here is because my spiritual master is he's traveling and preaching someplace else in some other universe, and couldn't be here for the event today.
Wow.
And that was, he was quoting Sridhar Maharaj as making that statement. So I have to sit in for him because
wow.
He's. I really was impressed by that.
Yeah.
So I have a similar concept, of course. Either Srila Prabhupada is with Krishna, or maybe he's been sent around on another assignment. The devotees think differently, and you'll hear different opinions about when he departed. Where did he go, and who is he with? But there's no doubt in our minds, obviously. He even said that he's never forgotten Krishna. So point is that for Prabhupada, there's no lamentation. And Prabhupada taught us that when the Vaishnava departs, there's no need to lament for the departure of the Vaishnava. Yet you just began with song breaking the head against a stone, because where has Lord Gauranga gone, and where has all of his associates gone? They've gone and they left me here, so to break my head against a stone in separation from them.
Yeah, separation.
So that's generally, as Prabhupada said, there's no cause for lamentation for the Vaishnava, but there's still lamentation because of separation. And of course, separation is defined in as an asset. And Prabhupada even spoke about that in terms of separation from Krishna and equating it with separation from the spiritual master. That he said that when devotees feel separation from the spiritual master, and I looked this up today, and so many talks Prabhupada made the same point.
Mm-hmm.
Says, you want to become free from separation? Remember the instructions. So many talks. I mean, I could have cut and pasted at least 20 of them.
Wow.
With Prabhupada.
Well, yeah, I mean, one thing I remember him saying was, I always felt that I was walking side by side my spiritual master. I remember him saying that. So I guess if you follow the instructions, you feel Srila Prabhupada walking the walk with you.
Yeah, I took one.
Oh, good.
I took one. It was, and
Yeah.
It was one of the first books I ever read, Elevation to Krishna Consciousness. Do you remember when that book came out? Was it 71? I think it was one of the...
It was one of the ones we
one of the
got
first
to
ones.
distribute.
It was printed in North Beacon Street. Those were the books that we were printing
there
in the Boston Temple.
Right. Oh.
We were printing those books before I moved into the temples when the press was there. So it had to be...
Yeah.
71. 71, I think, probably 71. And Prabhupada said this. Let me see. Yeah. He said, how can we describe God or understand His glories? It is not possible. God is unlimited, regardless of our finite limitations. However, we can express our own feelings and say, my God, my Lord. This will be accepted. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaches us to pray in this way. Ayinanda Tanuja Kinkaram. O son of Maharaj Nanda, I am your eternal servitor, and although I am so, somehow or other, I have fallen in the ocean of birth and death. Please, therefore, pick me up from this ocean of death and fix me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. This should be the standard of prayer. We should only want to be placed as one of the atoms at Krishna's lotus feet to render service unto him. Everyone is praying to God with some interest. But even if we pray to God, give me some money, give me some relief, a nice house, a nice wife, or nice food, that is also good. Yet this is not the standard of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's prayer. Our only prayer should be that the Lord enable us to serve him birth after birth. Our prayer should be, dear Lord, you are so great that I want to engage in your service. I have been serving all these rascals, and I'm not satisfied. Now I have come to you. Please engage me in your service. This is the last word in prayer. Some people complain that when they pray to God, they do not feel his presence. We should know that this is due to our incapacities, not God's. There are two conceptions of presence: the physical conception and the vibrational conception. The physical conception is temporary, whereas the vibrational conception is eternal. When we enjoy or relish the vibration of Krishna's teachings in Bhagavad Gita, or when we chant Hare Krishna, we should know that by those vibrations, he is immediately present. Excuse me, my software is not cooperating. He is absolute. And because of this, his vibration is just as important as his physical presence. When we feel separation from Krishna or the spiritual master, we should just try to remember their words of instructions, and then we will no longer feel that separation. Such association with Krishna and the spiritual master should be association by vibration, not physical presence. This is real association. We put so much stress on seeing, but when Krishna was present on this earth, so many people saw him and did not realize that he is God. So what is the advantage of seeing? By seeing Krishna, we will not understand him. But by listening carefully to his teachings, we can come to the platform of understanding. We can touch Krishna immediately by sound vibration. Therefore, we should give more stress to the sound vibration of Krishna and of the spiritual master. Then we'll feel happy and won't feel separation. And there's more, but that's
Read
the
on,
essence.
read on.
That's the essence. Prabhupada was, they gave Arjuna as the example. There's that well-known verse in the first canto of the Bhagavatam when Arjuna was speaking, that's by remembering Krishna's instructions, then all his lamentation went away. And Prabhupada gave this wonderful commentary in that verse of how just as Arjuna became free from all lamentation, simply by remembering those words which he heard from Krishna when he was present, he said in the same way, devotees in this world, simply by remembering instructions, they can become free from all lamentation. And he used Arjuna. This is what Prabhupada is using as an example here, Arjuna's instructions. So, separation, as Prabhupada said, should force us to remember his instructions. And then Prabhupada says, by remembering his instructions, then one will be present with the spiritual master, and all lamentation will dissipate by the remembrance of those instructions. But that's a high bar.
Yeah, I was thinking today that, everyone felt so much love when you're in the temple with Srila Prabhupada. Or if you even, after the Rath Yatra in San Francisco, when he was sitting with the devotees and Jayananda was still cleaning up the grounds, and it's, where's my Jayananda? But that, it was a very secure feeling. So, I don't know, I miss that.
But why? Why did Prabhupada give so much of himself? Why did he give so much of himself in November 1977? He knew he was leaving. Devotees anticipated he was leaving, but why did he give so much of himself? Because those, the pleasure, the happiness, the joy that one experiences in one's presence with the spiritual master becomes the impetus to remember all that we, in gratitude, all that we got from him, so that we can survive his absence.
Yeah.
So Prabhupada gave himself. He knew he was saying it back in the early 70s. How much longer will I be here?
Yeah.
I'm not I'm not meant to be in this world so much longer. He knew it. Don't you think he was giving so much of himself to prepare us, as such neophyte devotees who were completely unprepared for his departure, but he knew. And he knew.
Yeah, he mentioned, I mean, the symptoms were there, he said, in a couple of places. The symptoms are there. I mean, heart attacks and...
Symptoms are there.
Yeah.
I mean, I know for myself, for me, the heaviest, the absolute heaviest for me. Because, and which really, I mean, it was the heaviest, but it really, because I was in November 1977, as I was telling the devotees, I was in a house full of new bhaktas.
Yeah.
I was, besides Rigupati, we were the only initiated devotees in November 1977. And I don't know, maybe there was about 15, 20 bhaktas. We were training them up. It was a book distribution training house. Janmashtami was
Where was
there.
that? In Boston or
Connecticut.
Connecticut?
Yeah, Connecticut. And then anyway, temple president in Boston, who's going to India. We didn't know Prabhupada wanted everybody to come. It wasn't sort of like kept under wraps. I'm sure you remember.
Because the Christmas marathon was about to happen.
He was kept under wraps. And although Prabhupada openly said, let anybody who wants to come, come. At least that's how it was presented to me afterwards. So the temple president in Boston, he went to India, and he said, can you take charge of the temple while I'm gone? And of course, I did. I somehow managed both places, the Hartford Temple and the Boston Temple. And he went to India. And then while he was in India, that was the time when Prabhupada said all the devotees were, because you know the whole Leela, when Prabhupada finally agreed that he would stay to finish the Bhagavatam. And then he came back, the temple president of Boston. He came back because the atmosphere got, Prabhupada was eating.
Yeah.
He had agreed, and for us, that was like, at least how I was thinking. Prabhupada said he's going to stay. And business as usual. Train the bhaktas, go out, distribute books, and Prabhupada's going to stay and finish the Bhagavatam. And then, in that state of mind, I was driving with all the devotees, all the bhaktas, to Boston. I can't remember what the reason was. It was for an event. And I was going to be late. And I pulled over to a gas station, payphone. Had to use the payphone to call and apologize. I was going to be a little late. And the devotee, who was the president at the time, said, Srila Prabhupada left.
Whoa. Kind of a discomforting place to receive that news. Telephone booth.
Telephone booth, car full of bhaktas,
Yeah.
van full of bhaktas. And I was thinking Prabhupada's staying.
Yeah.
And then I got hit like everybody got hit.
Oh, yeah.
Like I was telling the devotees the other day that ask any disciple of Prabhupada where they were when they found out Prabhupada left. Everyone knows where they were. It was like it was a movie back in the 50s, the day the earth stood still. I don't know if you remember. You know the movie? Yeah. Oh, okay. It was like
The day the earth sits. I've heard of it, but
the day the earth stood still. Yeah. Everything stopped. Clocks stopped. People stopped.
yeah.
Vehicles stopped. The whole world stopped. And for all of us, it was like, it was the day the earth stood still. And for me, like I said, it was because I was in this frame of mind that Prabhupada already said he's going to stay. So what am I going to say? Prabhupada, you said you're going to stay? No, of course not. But like all disciples, I did what Prabhupada said to do. And didn't stop. I just cried.
Right.
Just cried. I couldn't get in the car. I couldn't come out of the phone booth.
Wow.
All the bhaktas were looking at me. I couldn't get out of the phone booth. I didn't know what to tell them. They were all aspiring disciples of Prabhupada.
Right, yeah. Was Jamastami there in the group?
Yeah. I think Jamastami, he was in the group. Jamastami was there. I'm almost sure he was there.
Yeah, because I heard he just missed.
Yeah, he was in the group. I'm not sure if he wasn't in the car with me.
Oh.
He might have been in the van,
Okay.
the other vehicle, but he was with the group.
Pretty heavy. I mean, I was right there, so, day after day, and then that morning, I got up really early for some reason. I don't know why. And I went down to Prabhupada's room, and there was only 3 devotees with Prabhupada. Jayadvaita, Bhakti True Maharaj, Jayadvaita Maharaj, and Bharaj. And it was like before Mangalarti. And Prabhupada was flailing his arms, and they didn't know it was there's an ecstatic symptom like that, Mother Yasoda. Or what was they're asking Prabhupada, what are you trying to tell us, Prabhupada? What are you trying to tell us? But he wasn't answering. But what they did do is they thought maybe Prabhupada needs to sit up. And they were feeding him out of a dropper or some orange juice. And none of us were thinking Prabhupada's going to leave. We just wouldn't admit it, in our minds, Prabhupada is going to. So, but when they sat Prabhupada up and I saw Prabhupada, I just all the blood drained from my head, and I was feeling like bad feelings, sometimes you get bad feelings. I mean, Prabhupada, I don't know how he was maintaining his life You know, it was
It's
just
like plastic wrap over bones.
You know, it's like, whoa. You know, and it really hit me. And so that was that morning. And yeah.
I guess my point was, though, that everything was training for that. Papa was training us for that.
Oh, yeah. He showed us, you know, how to go, you know.
Yeah.
For sure.
I've listened to Prabhupada, all Prabhupada's 1977 talks, all of them consecutively.
Like not lectures, but
It's just talks, because he didn't give many lectures in 77.
Right.
He gave very few lectures in 77. And mostly discussions with devotees in his room, in the Kumbh Mela,
Yeah.
in Bombay,
In India.
in India, and and Prabhupada again and again in his talks, devotees were they were very concerned about Prabhupada's health. What can we do? Medicine. Prabhupada was so detached. It's so convincing. The only reason why Prabhupada was agreeing was to increase their attachment to him. He wasn't. He was so detached. One thing after the next was happening, and you could hear, because Prabhupada, I was listening to these conversations. They're all clearly, most of them are just very clearly audible. And he was training not only how the devotee should live after he leaves, but he was training how they should leave.
Oh, this is how you leave.
This is how you leave. And it was a lesson. It was a constant lesson that Prabhupada was teaching. Never anything for himself. Never. He just no conception of anything for himself. It was just his Vrindavan mood. Nothing for himself, everything for Krishna. And his only objective was, the more they become attached to my instructions, the more someday I can hope they'll become attached to Krishna in the same way. So Prabhupada always emphasized instructions is not only through his words, but also by his example. So he taught many instructions he gave through his words and for those who had the opportunity to be in his presence to see his example. One of the things I was recently having a conversation with a devotee recently, I won't go into details about what provoked the conversation, but the devotee had this conception that Prabhupada's instructions were very heavy. That in one sense they were, because basically he was preaching pure devotional service, and that's heavy. He was uncompromising.
It is heavy. Yeah.
It's heavy, especially if you're on the other end. You're on the other end.
Arjuna was on the other end.
It's heavy.
Yeah.
And not only is it heavy when Prabhupada preaches it, but it's even heavier because the weight is there because Prabhupada's exemplifying it. And so not only do you have his words, but you have his example, which is putting more and more weight on his words. So you're feeling the weight. So, yet on the other hand, as I was trying, because this devotee was really having a very difficult time because he was trained to think that if you don't surrender completely to pure devotional service, your life is lost and you're going to hell. And I tried to help him understand that where did he get a conception like that?
Yeah.
And Prabhupada didn't teach that. Krishna's not like that. And moreover, again and again and again, although Prabhupada was heavy and very strict, he gives the own as an example in the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam that the symptom of a non-envious person is that he's very liberal in his dealings with others.
Mm-hmm.
And Prabhupada was, and you listen to the devotees who had personal association again and again and again and again, devotees will say how kind, how forgiving, how merciful. And I was just reading so many stories today as just of that concept of how Prabhupada was his personal, although the ideal was heavy, but in his, of course, sometimes he could be heavy too, but he knew who to be heavy with,
Yeah.
and he knew not to be
Especially
heavy.
those in leadership positions.
He knew
they got the most.
Who not to be heavy with.
The most.
They got the sauce.
Yeah, they got the sauce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always think, I think it was in Calcutta once, and devotee asked Prabhupada, should we be killing the rats? Because there were a lot of rats in the kitchen.
All right.
And Prabhupada said, no, we should kill you. Because you're so unclean.
You're so unclean. That's why there's rats.
I mean, he could be heavy.
Oh, yeah.
But he knew who to be heavy with.
Yeah. The leadership, I remember Tamal Krishna getting heavied out quite a few times.
I was there. Not in the room, but yeah. I was there. 76.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He was very heavy.
Yeah.
But he was always so kind. I was just reading today how Satsarup Maharaj was giving a little anecdote of how Prabhupada was pushing and pushing because Satsarup Maharaj was taking his transcriptions, and he was in Boston at the time, and they were putting the press together, and Satsarup Maharaj was really, really busy, overwhelmed, and Prabhupada was, expecting. And then Prabhupada saw how overwhelmed he was, and Prabhupada immediately said, it's okay, don't worry about this. And Satsarup Maharaj said Prabhupada was so kind to him that he immediately could understand. He knew when to not push. Mm-hmm. And he backed away and made him feel completely useful. Yeah. Useful. Mm-hmm. I guess that's the best word. Yeah. Not useless. Where sometimes, devotees can be made to feel useless. And but Prabhupada didn't have that nature. Mm-hmm. Even I remember, because I won't mention his name. He was my GBC, but he left in 1976. He left, and he left from a program I was with him on. Oh. I was personally with him on a program. He took the vehicle, drove down to New York, flew out of New York, and we're all wondering, where's Prabhu? Swami. Where's Swamiji? And but Prabhupada was so kind. Prabhupada was so merciful, yeah. So kind. So kind. So forgiving. They even put it in the purport in the 8th canto of the Bhagavatam. It was in reference to that. Oh, yeah. When the crocodile
A crocodile, yeah.
Gajendra
I
the
was just
elephant.
reading where he said that.
Yeah. He said if one cannot remain strong, like
then you should
if he's not in his natural element, then let him
change
get
your
strength
ashram, right?
and his strength in his natural. He said it in respect to that god brother.
Oh,
And
yeah. There are many cases. I mean, Prabhupada was a little annoyed or upset. He admonished some of the leaders who one devotee had left. He was a leading devotee in Australia. And then Prabhupada said, no, he can't come back. You've made him feel guilty, And there's another devotee that sold property in Hawaii and left. And Prabhupada, they said, we should sue him. We should take him to court. And Prabhupada said, no, he's one of us. You can't have him, I don't take legal action. He's one of us.
A whole book could be written. I'm sure a whole Lilamrita could be written. Prabhupada's dealings.
Mm-hmm.
With a lamb at home and a lion on the chase or something.
Yeah.
His dealings were so much different. His kindness. So these things are what Prabhupada taught by his example. Not just his instructions, yes, but we have his example. Mm-hmm. And he even said sometimes precept is more, example is more important than precept.
Yes, definitely.
What he did.
Definitely.
So 77 was the year Prabhupada was teaching.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many of us understood the instruction or were prepared for it, but he was definitely teaching. And in a way that he was hoping would prepare us for what was to come. So, yes, there's lamentation, certainly. But then the shelter is remembrance. It's the shelter. Prabhupada gave so much to remember that it's not possible to even, just as it was stated of Lord Chaitanya, his pastimes would later be elaborated on by Vyasadeva. Same with Prabhupada's pastimes. There'll be no end. And those are things that keep us together, I guess, for on such days as his disappearance day. Not so much the celebration part. I still haven't been able to figure that one out. And it's been over 40 years. But it's the remembrance and his instructions. And everything that he came to give us. We should churn more and more. Would you like to add something, Madhavananda Prabhu? Huh? Yes? Are you sure? Sorry? You're sure? I had something I didn't even get to it yet, but I don't think there's time to even get to it. Huh? I was going to talk about Prabhupada's separation of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Viraha Astaka. Prabhupada wrote it in 1958. The year before he took sannyas. Of course, the circumstances under which Prabhupada wrote that Viraha Astaka, the circumstances were such that Prabhupada definitely his observation of what had happened to the Gaudiya Math and the mission of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and his purposes, which he wanted to fix his mind on in executing Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's order of bringing Krishna consciousness to the West. They were all churning in his heart. Obviously, 1958 was the year. He took sannyas in 59. 58, he wrote Vrindavan Bhajan. Yes, the Vrindavan Bhajan. And those verses, Prabhupada was really heavy about let them stay in the temple and ring their bells. Yeah. He's talking about all that's left. Where are my family now? All that's left is simply a list of names. And he was talking about the people sitting around listening to the radio. What was their pastime? And he was really speaking a very, very strong.
He had an offering in Bombay where he kind of just admonished his god brothers.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was more than once.
That was pretty...
Well, this was with Vihara. He made some pretty strong statements. And
in fact, he used the word shame when he made that Vyas Puja offering. Shame on you, brothers. You probably know that. I read that. So, yeah.
But he presented himself in every verse as being totally despondent. Every verse he ended it by saying, I'm totally despondent. This was 58. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta left in 36. So December 31st, 1936. So it was 22 years later.
22 years.
And Prabhupada even wrote, I was going to begin, he wrote it in the Bhagavatam, 4th canto. 4th canto, 28th chapter, 48th verse. The verse is, O best of kings, please get up, get up. Just see this world surrounded by water and infested with rogues and so-called kings. This world is very much afraid, and it is your duty to protect her. Purport. Whenever an acharya comes, following the superior orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or his representative, he establishes the principles of religion as enunciated in Bhagavad Gita. Religion means abiding by the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Religious principles begin from the time one surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is the Acharya's duty to spread a bona fide religious system and induce everyone to bow down before the Supreme Lord. Just yesterday, I was listening to a lecture. One of my favorites. See, yesterday, was it today? Uppsala University. Prabhupada was speaking at Uppsala University in Stockholm. He gave a lecture, mostly spoke about social order, varnashram, and talked about the higher orders of society, how the body needs a head, and how that the society with no head is a headless society and has no direction. And he says you can do without the arms, you can do without the legs, but you can't do without the head. And it was to university students. And there was a lot of resistance. Prabhupada asked for questions at the end. A lot of resistance. And first, one man was speaking out, and he talked about nonviolence. You think you're first-class man. Why are you sitting on that fancy seat? And everybody else is sitting around you. And he said, and why all these flowers around? You had to kill those flowers, didn't you? Did you kill those flowers? And one man was speaking in that way, and I think it was Hansa Duda was trying to reason with him. Do you think a flower and a human being is on the same level? Do you think, and Prabhupada said, you think my killing a plant, my killing you, that's the same? And then Prabhupada then went on to Patram Pushpam Palam Toyam and gave that explanation that Krishna says he's ready to accept the flower. And he was quoting Krishna. So he silenced that man. And another man said to him, he said, so you think you're a first-class man, otherwise why are you sitting on a seat like that? And Prabhupada said, no, I'm not first-class man. I'm fifth-class man.
Yeah.
I'm serving the other four classes. He says, you have it wrong. And he took like this completely humble, disarming position.
Disarmed the guy.
Completely disarmed him in his humility. And then another man came forward. And the man was trying to argue with him how to know God. How do you know God? And Prabhupada, he was challenging Prabhupada, you can speak of God, but how do you know God? And Prabhupada was trying to ask him, do you have a method of understanding? If you have a method of understanding God, please tell me, I'll learn from you. And the man was challenging, and then it went back and forth for some time about the method for knowing God. And finally, Prabhupada asked him, so tell me, what is your method for knowing God? You tell me. He said, I don't know. I said, you have no method for telling God? And you're speaking about God? What business do you have for speaking about God if you have no method for knowing God? He says, if you're coming here, you should hear from me. Do you want to hear from me? He said, yes, I want to hear. You tell me, what is the method for knowing God? Prabhupada said, I say Krishna is God. Take it. And have kirtan. That was Prabhupada's only business. Getting them to surrender.
That happened in San Francisco when they were doing initiations, and one person put his hand up, and he was a hippie. And the devotees, were in retrospect, the devotees said, oh, you have to go through this, that, and the other. And the hippie said, Prabhupada, can I take initiation from you? Prabhupada said, yes, but tell me, who is God? And the guy said, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He said, yes, I can initiate you. You know, very broad-minded. On the train in India, he told Ramaswar that when we build up Mayapur, he's talking about Mayapur. He said those devotees who are addicted to intoxication, will have them in a certain area. Then he said those who are addicted to meat eating, we'll have them in another area, but they're devotees. And that's a manuscript that Govinda Dasi has, and she put it on social media, on the internet. And I was reading this, and wow, Prabhupada, he's so broad-minded. He's accommodating. He said they can't eat slaughtered animals, but they can have goat or something like this, and because usually our thoughts are, at least mine perspective is, well, you have to give up meat eating and this and that, But he was speaking to Ramaswar like that about how he's going to build Mayapur, how it's going to be this huge thing, and it's going to accommodate different levels of devotees, different types of personalities, I guess. And discussion with Ramaswar on that. Amazing. That's a lot of compassion.
So much. Let me finish reading this purport.
Yeah.
So, it is the Acharya's duty to spread a bona fide religious system and induce everyone to bow down before the Supreme Lord. One executes the religious principles by rendering devotional service. Specifically, 9 items like hearing, chanting, and remembering. Unfortunately, when the Acharya disappears, rogues and non-devotees take advantage and immediately begin to introduce, oh, come on, this guy's really persistent.
Yeah.
He's coming out with any,
fired up today.
They like the ears. Unfortunately, when the Acharya disappears, rogues and devotees take advantage and immediately begin to introduce unauthorized principles in the name of so-called swamis, yogis, philanthropists, welfare workers, and so on. Actually, human life is meant for executing the orders of the Supreme Lord, and this is stated in Bhagavad Gita. Manmana bhava mad bhakto madhyajimam namaskuru mam evaishasi yuktaivam atmanam matparayana. Engage your mind always in thinking of me and become my devotee. Offer obeisances and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. The main business of human society is to think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead at all times. To become his devotees, to worship the Supreme Lord, and to bow down before him. The Acharya, the authorized representative of the Supreme Lord, establishes these principles, but when he disappears, things once again become disordered. The perfect disciples of the Acharya try to relieve the situation by sincerely following the instructions of the spiritual master. At the present moment, practically the entire world is afraid of rogues and non-devotees. Therefore, this Krishna consciousness movement is started to save the world from irreligious principles. Everyone should cooperate with this movement in order to bring about actual peace and happiness in the world. It's the only purport I can remember when Prabhupada spoke about when the Acharya leaves.
There's he mentions that in Light of the Bhagavad.
Oh yeah, Light of the Bhagavad.
There's a whole section there on when the Acharya leaves.
Oh, do you remember where it is?
Well, it's not a very big book, so I don't know
I don't
which
think
chapter.
I don't have the light of Bhagavad in my. Do you have it in your phone?
You'd have to do some digging because I can't remember which chapter it is, but it's definitely a lot of metaphor there with certain creatures come out when I think the rainy season is over.
That talks about during the rainy season when the glowworms in the trees
Yeah.
are perceived as the real luminaries.
Yeah.
The luminaries in the sky are covered by the clouds.
Right, there's that.
There's that also.
There.
That's in Krishna book. People mistake.
But he mentions in there that chaos ensues when the great acharyas leave. However, as he says here, the sincere disciples will push on the movement in the face of.
I'm going to read just a couple of verses of Viraha Astaka, and then we can move on. As I said, this was written by Srila Prabhupada in 1958. And December 1958. We took sannyasa in September 1959? Yeah, September 1959. So, there's that whole story. Can't remember what year it was when he had dreams of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta. Was it 55? Might have been 1955 when he came to be our Sridhar Maharaj's.
Right. I don't know what year it was, but
yeah, I seem to remember because there used to be this saying that every 11 years something significant happened in Prabhupada's life. Shrutikiri presented it. 1922, he met Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. 1933, took initiation. 1944, he started back to Godhead. 1955, he left his family. 1966, he incorporated ISKCON. And when they were having the conversation, the devotees asked Prabhupada, so Prabhupada, something will happen in 1977?
Whoa.
I don't think there was any answer. They were thinking 1977 was going to be the year Prabhupada would finish Bhagavatam.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Shrutikirti tells that story. It was a conversation with Prabhupada. So it must have been 55. That when Prabhupada went to be our Sridhar Maharaj, and he told him that Srila Bhakti Siddhanta appeared to him in a dream.
Mm-hmm. Calling him.
And B.R. Sridhar Maharaj was a little hesitant because he had a relationship with Prabhupada's family. And he told him that, maybe you should, I think he said something like, take Vanaprastha first and gradually, And then it happened again a second time, middle of the night, something like it was 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, knocking on the door. And Prabhupada said, Guru Maharaj, please, he told me I have to take sannyas. He came again tonight.
Wow.
And then I can't remember what he told. B.R. Sridhar Maharaj told him that time. Of course, we know he took sannyas from Keshav Maharaj. But he said that the next day, after that night, the next day they went to where Prabhupada was staying and he was gone. That was it. He just left family. And Can't remember why I brought that up. It was in relationship to something you said. But he's taking sannyas.
Well, you can see how everything was orchestrated by Krishna, because he was brought to America at the perfect time, I would say. He was brought to the West at the perfect time,
Yadava brings it out nicely in the movie.
Yeah. All the chaos. And the
War Vietnam.
the love children, and peace and love, and all that, right?
So I'm going to read the Viraha Astaka, just the first couple of verses.
Yeah.
It has 8 sections. First is the flood of Krishna Prema, which is he describes of what he experienced when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta broke open the storehouse, just like Lord Nityananda came with his plow, and he quotes it from Nitagunamani. So first was the flood of Krishna Prema, then the merciful flood has been stopped, practical chanting and preaching, the essential purport neglected, the disciples' empowerment is lost, the preaching mission is scattered. So he's going to speak about his observation, distributing the pure devotional process, and then if only you would come again. So these are the 8 sections. Flood of Krishna Prema. O Srila Prabhupada, of course Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, you personally suffer to see the suffering of the fallen conditioned souls. On this anniversary of your separation, I am utterly despondent. The ocean of mercy was previously held back by a dam, but Lord Nityananda personally cut a channel in it and thereby released the outpouring flood of pure ecstatic love of God. Those devotees to whom the responsibility was given to continue spreading this flood of love somehow became overpowered by Maya and were thus reduced to simply performing ritualistic Hindu ceremonies for the benefit of the materialists. Lord Nityananda's inundation of prema was thus completely stopped by those known as Jati Gosai, caste Goswamis. But then you personally came, O Master, to open wide the floodgates once again. Again you engulfed everyone in the deluge of pure divine love, even such a low, wretched, fallen, and sinful soul as myself. On the strength of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's command, you sent all your servants as spiritual masters going from door to door just to deliver the fallen souls. The devotees were enthusiastically preaching everywhere, from the oceans to the Himalaya mountains. But now that you have gone from our midst, everything today has become very dark. O Srila Prabhupada, you personally suffered to see the suffering of the fallen conditioned souls. On this day of your separation, I am utterly despondent. Makes me think of that. I was listening to a talk Prabhupada was giving a couple of weeks ago. He was telling the story of how when he was in Allahabad and doing his pharmaceutical work, that he had met certain devotees in 1922 in that meeting with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta in Calcutta, in that first meeting. And then when he was in Allahabad, they were somehow told to go and to meet Abai. He wasn't initiated yet, and to see if they could get help from him. And Prabhupada was saying that he said when these, he called them Gaudiya Math people came, my brothers, he said, the Gaudiya Math people came. He said, when I saw them, I immediately remembered my Guru Maharaj. He was already thinking in his heart, because he had already accepted Srila Bhaktisiddhanta in his heart. So he said, as soon as by seeing the Gaudiya Math people, he said, he immediately remembered his Guru Maharaj. And then they came, but they asked for some assistance. And Prabhupada is referring to here that your servants, you sent all your servants as spiritual masters going from door to door just to deliver the fallen souls. He was feeling that actually his Guru Maharaj was coming to him personally through these servants to engage him in serving, because he hadn't, at that point, up till that point, he had not been rendering any service. There's another nice story I recently read when Prabhupada was in Allahabad, because he was Obial Kapoor. He was also in Allahabad at that time. Both of them were uninitiated at that time, but they knew each other because of their connections with Gaudiya Math. And Obial Kapoor, I guess he came to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada came to give him some of his tonic. You know this story?
No.
Prabhupada came to give him some of this tonic that he had made in his laboratory. And Obial Kapoor said, thank you very much for giving this tonic. He says, but I want the other tonic that you have. Can you give me some of that?
Yeah.
That was in Allahabad. And he said, I want, because Obial Kapoor, he described in his interview, I think Vyasaki took an interview of him, that he always looked up to Prabhupada, although I think he took initiation, Obial Kapoor took initiation the year before him. He always looked up to Prabhupada as his senior and had the deepest respect for him. So he said, no, I want your other tonic. You have it, and I know you're keeping it hidden. Can you please give that to me? And Prabhupada said, well, he said that something like to the effect that other tonic there's no secret. Is Lord Chaitanya's given it to everyone. Is Janadapi Sunni Chinatora Apihusi Ishnana Amani Namanandiya Kirtanaya Sadahari. And he said, that tonic, someday I will distribute to the whole world.
Wow.
That was in Allahabad. So,
Like when he met that person in New York, and he said there are many, many buildings coming, many temples.
Yeah, simply separated by time.
Yeah.
I can't remember the person's name. He was,
Actually,
they got his name at some point.
Yeah. We got this story because somehow the guy ended up in Vancouver. And I don't know if he ever got initiation, but he favorable, and he met devotees in Vancouver.
Tell the story. Maybe the devotees don't know what you're talking about.
I know it only vaguely. The details escaped me, but Srila Prabhupada was in New York, and he
66, right?
It was at 66. It was early, or very early.
Could have been even 65.
Yeah. Maybe you can elaborate on it, but he met this person in the streets. And,
On a bench.
Kind of on a bench, yeah, on a bench. And what I remember is he said the person was interested because Prabhupada was like a sadhu from India, and definitely this person was part of the hippie movement. Because when I met him in Vancouver, he's still many years later. And Prabhupada was saying that his mission to his spiritual master, and that only time is separating. There will be many temples, many buildings, and many temples, and many people joining. I mean, that's a vague representation of probably what Srila Prabhupada told him. And then somehow he ended up over on the west side of over in Vancouver, and he met us devotees, and he was telling, yeah, I met your guru way back when, and he was telling us that this Prabhupada told him that there would be many temples built, many buildings built, and I don't know if he said many books just printed or published. I mean, that's a vague memory I have of that encounter he had with this person just out in the streets of New York, way back in the very embryo stages of the movement.
Many temples. They already knew it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a nice story. I somehow thought of it when you said many temples. It's not so much true. It's related, but I heard this I heard it from Bajing Rhyme, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Told it in the festival, I think. How Prabhupada was in Vrindavan. I can't remember the name of the person that came to see Prabhupada. I think he was influential. He was an influential person. And he sat down and started talking to Prabhupada, but the only thing he was particularly interested in talking about was how he had just met this mystic yogi. And this mystic yogi had manifested an apple from thin air. Were you there when he told this story? He manifested this apple from thin air. And somehow he couldn't stop talking about it, and Prabhupada was not very impressed, at all. He's trying to be nice and patient and tolerant with him, but he wasn't very impressed. So Prabhupada finally tried to get him to listen. He said, that's not such a big thing. And then Prabhupada started telling him, he said, I was insignificant Swami. I went to America and I had nothing. 40 rupees. And, but I started preaching, telling others about Krishna. And very soon, many people came. And after that, many people started to come, and gradually we started to open many temples. Temples all over the world. And he said, in all these temples, we have many kitchens. And he said, in all these kitchens, we have many apples. And they came from nothing. So he said, who does better magic? Prabhupada had an answer for everything.
Oh yeah, he's quick on the return. Really quick.
Anyways, Vira Astaka. I'm not going to get into it, because if we get into it, it really gets into an area I don't want to get into it right now, that area. Prabhupada's despondency.
Oh,
Yeah, because he really demonstrates, that just how much he was meditating on everything that Wani, he could see that nobody seems to catch what our Guru Maharaj really wanted to happen. They did, and Prabhupada was very outspoken, and
he was.
Prabhupada was convinced that if we really want to, I was just reading today, what was it? Srila Bhakti Siddhanta. Oh yeah, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, Dushtamana.
Oh.
Because in Dushtamana, he was really outspoken about those who were solitary worship. And there, I don't know, maybe 19 prayers, I think, that Srila Bhakti Siddhanta had written about, really speaking very openly about those who think they can serve in a very higher way by solitary worship. And in the last two verses of Dushtamana, he says, maybe the last few verses, he says, the whole thing is heavy from start to finish, but he says, where is it? One who falsely gives up things that could actually be used in the Lord's service probably calls himself a renunciate. But unfortunately, he can never become a Vaishnava by such an attitude. Abandoning his servitorship to the lotus feet of Lord Hari and resigning himself to his solitary home, whatever is gained by that exercise can only be the worthless treasure of deception. Ever engage yourself in the service of Sri Radha and keep aloof from the vicious snake of materialistic sense gratification. The glory of participating in the Lord's kirtan is not meant to bolster anyone's ambitions for personal recognition. O mind, why then have you abandoned the identity of being Radha's eternal servant in favor of retiring to a solitary place to practice the cheating process of so-called bhajan? The most valuable treasures amongst the Lord's preachers are the eternal personalities residing in Vrajadam. They never occupy themselves with begging for worthless material reputation, which is cherished only by the living dead.
Wow.
The Vrajavasis are truly infused with life, and therefore they preach in order to give life to the walking corpses of the mundane world.
Wow.
All the songs that the Vrajavasis sing about the glories of Lord Krishna are devoid of any tinge of desire for fame. This humble servant of Radha and her beloved Krishna always hopes for kirtan, and he begs all to loudly sing the names of Lord Hari. The transcendental power of congregational chanting automatically awakens remembrance of the Lord and his divine pastimes in relation to one's own eternal spiritual form. Only at that time does it become possible to go off to a solitary place and engage in the confidential worship of their lordships. Hare Krishna.
Chakshu, cutting through the... Very strong.
Hare Krishna.
Very strong.
Madhavanandi, I know you have like an unlimited storehouse that you've been perusing through.
Nectar.
In relationship to the topics we've been discussing, and you're not going to share them? You're going to be a Kripana? Can you afford to be a Kripana and be called such?
Depriving us. We feel deprived.
I order you.
Can I have him sit here and I'll trade seats? I was a president in Seattle in 1999. Mayapur said Goragraganya gana go to Goloruharam Goranga Gudatama Gopyada Kopa Briksham Gopala Gada Ratidam Yati Singha Gora Govinda Deshikavaram Satatam Namami Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachadane Nirvisesa Shunyavadi Paschachadi Shatadane Panchakalpatarubhischa Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Brinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I feel a little bad and shy to sit and speak in front of Naranja Maharaj and Kripanidhi Prabhu. So many wonderful devotees here, especially because I'm not a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. I didn't have the good fortune of ever meeting Srila Prabhupada. But it occurs to me also that perhaps there is some utility in me saying something, maybe a few points of utility. Just like in Orissa, we have many Odissi dance gurus. And sometimes the Odissi dance guru has a little child who's a few months old and the child can't even walk, but the child is trying to dance. And it's a joke, but it gives some pleasure to the father. So if we can say something to please Naranja Maharaj, Kripanidhi Prabhu and others, and it has some meaning. And another point can be that perhaps I'm someone that devotees here, many of you can relate to, because I never met Srila Prabhupada. And we may think, sometimes we might consider that Prabhupada's appearance or disappearance days are for days for devotees to speak about Prabhupada and how they remembered him, as we've been hearing so many wonderful stories. And we may think it really doesn't have anything to do with me. But that's a great mistake if we think like that. I can just say a few words about my own personal journey, my own personal feelings of Srila Prabhupada in some philosophical way too.
I first came in touch with Prabhupada's books in about 1971 or 72. I was in Colorado Springs, Colorado, a young boy. And in an abandoned house, we saw some pictures from Krishna book. And I really couldn't figure out what in the world those were, but it always struck me very deeply. And somehow it was around that time I became a vegetarian, although I didn't know anybody who was vegetarian. I had no idea about that. And I feel in retrospect that that was because of some touch of Srila Prabhupada. And then later, when we came to join the temple in Los Angeles in 1982, we would go to Srila Prabhupada's room upstairs, and you've seen so many photos of that room. We would go to Prabhupada's garden. We would go to Cheviot Hills Park and Venice Beach, where Prabhupada used to walk in the morning. And there would be festivals like today, and we'd hear from so many different senior devotees sharing their remembrances of Srila Prabhupada. And I remember feeling disturbed. I mean, it's nice. It's entertaining, honestly, in some ways, and it's heart-touching, but it's also a little disturbing to think that I just missed by a few years, as Narahari Chakravarti Thakur once described the separation from Gauranga Mahaprabhu and separation from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. He said, it was only such a few years. Why did I take birth at this time? I'm so very, very unfortunate. So maybe that's our entrance. Maybe that's our connection with Srila Prabhupada. Today we're celebrating a Viraha Utsav. And that means two things. It's Viraha, or separation for us, but it's Utsav, a festival, not for us, but it's a festival for the residents in the spiritual world. And moreover, the word Viraha has two compound words together, Vir and Aha, which means Vishesh Rup. V means Vishesh Rup, some special thing. And Raha means Rahasya Milan, or a confidential meeting, a very special confidential meeting. And that's there in separation. And no one knew about this kind of meeting until Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came. But even ourselves, it's just a theoretical thing. My revered spiritual master, Sri Srimad Gaur Govinda Maharaj, he oftentimes used to say that we should cry for Krishna. And on one occasion, his godbrother, Jagadatma Prabhu, he asked, he said, Maharaj, you're always saying we should cry for Krishna, but it's very theoretical for me. How can I cry for Krishna? How can I understand that? And our Guru Maharaj replied that after I leave this world, then you'll understand. So there's some theory that we have about serving the spiritual master, about coming close to the spiritual master, but we're put to task in the separation of that. So I grew up something spiritually in Los Angeles, always wanting some association with Srila Prabhupada, always missing that thing. And I remember some years later, things had gone south in my spiritual life. I had many personal difficulties, and I was very disturbed. And at that time, I realized I need a spiritual master, but I need someone like Srila Prabhupada. And I remember around that time, I went to visit a couple of senior devotees, very senior devotees, 26 Second Avenue. I won't say anything more. And there was 4 disciples of Srila Prabhupada in that room when I went to visit there, and somehow they were very affectionate to me. And when I went there, somebody asked me, how are you doing? And I made a comment that, I'm thinking I should have a guru. And then one by one, they tried to destroy whatever faith and inspiration I had in that idea. And these are personalities who are very senior that you can't argue with them. Very, very difficult. So like a small child, I just sat there for over an hour while they went on and told me, you just want Srila Prabhupada, you don't want anyone else as a guru. And I was very quiet, and I didn't know what to say, because these are very, very big senior persons. And at the same time, I had one thing in my heart. Finally, I had this conception that I need a guru, that I need someone. And that was a very precious realization for me. And I wanted to protect that. from their harsh words. So I didn't know what to say. I was quiet. And finally, after an hour, one of them said, "So, Prabhu, what do you think?" And then I had to reach really deep in my heart. And I told them, honestly, I said that I'm very touched that all of you care so much about me, that you want to protect me from the pain of having a guru who went away, which had already happened to me. I said, but for 7 years, since my first guru had gone away, I've been taking shelter of Srila Prabhupada. I said, but to tell you the truth, I'm not satisfied. And they were a little taken aback. And I said, I want what you have. And I started pointing to each one of them as individuals. And I said, you, Srila Prabhupada, I know, told you to go to South India and preach. And Prabhupada told you to go to Pakistan and preach. And Prabhupada told you to go to Africa and preach. And Prabhupada chastised you. And Prabhupada gave you instructions. And Prabhupada gave you affection. And he gave you attention. And I want that. And I'm not satisfied with anything short of that. I said, unless Srila Prabhupada comes to me in a dream or something and gives me some personal service, I want a service that I can dedicate my life to for him. And then they were quiet for maybe a minute or two. This is a long time. And finally one of them said, you're very sincere, Prabhu. He said, I'm sure you'll get what you want. And it was around that time that I started going to Srila Prabhupada's room when no one was there. And I would chant japa, and I would cry buckets and buckets of tears. And I would just pray, Prabhupada, please, I need someone. But I need someone like you. And it wasn't so long after that that I met my spiritual master. And I'm not trying to advertise him, please excuse me. But I strongly felt at that time that Srila Prabhupada sent him. Sometimes devotees, we hear so much about Srila Prabhupada. And it's a little painful in a way. People speaking about how they met Prabhupada and they saw him do this and that, and the people speaking about how Prabhupada's present in his books, Prabhupada's present in his deities. But there's another way that Srila Prabhupada is present, and that Srila Prabhupada is present in his devotees. And for me personally, that's the most important form of Srila Prabhupada. And I felt when I met my spiritual master, that's one of the things that I wanted in him. I felt like I was meeting Srila Prabhupada through him. And I'm just mentioning it again to encourage devotees that that's possible. That's what we should want. That should be the standard. Not just that senior devotees come and tell us, I'm so fortunate and I met Prabhupada and he told me this and I saw this and that. And indirectly we're thinking, wow, I just missed out, man. I'm completely out of luck. There's nothing good for me. And in that sense, I say a little strong thing. If we speak like that, if we think like that, then it makes everything mundane. And it makes Srila Prabhupada into an historical figure. And someone who, Hare Krishna, someone who's no longer present, someone who's dead. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur says he reasons ill that Vaishnavas die when they're living still and sound. And Srila Prabhupada is still present, but I want to meet him and his followers and those devotees who've dedicated their lives, who've given everything to him. And I found something like that in association with my spiritual master, and then he also left. And I strongly feel now that I want to meet Srila Prabhupada in his instructions, as Maharaj was reading from the purport of Prabhupada in the 4th canto of the Bhagavatam. We should understand that such a person is personally present still. And we can take advantage of that. My Guru Maharaj once was giving a talk in London, in the Manor, and there was a group of devotees who came to hear from him. And they were very eager and appreciative. And after they left, my Guru Maharaj asked, well, who were they? To his servant. And they said, these were a group of devotees who were initiated previously by XYZ guru in London who had left. And after they left, they went to one of Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers, who, that particular godbrother, Srila Prabhupada, my Guru Maharaj expressed on other occasions great regard for and said he's a Mahabhagavat, he's a bona fide guru. But at that time, Guru Maharaj said, why did they do that? They made a mistake. He said they should have taken shelter of Srila Prabhupada. And I think it's something like you work for a company, and if you can work for a company for 20 years, and after 20 years, is that me? No. After 20 years, you can retire. It just means another phone. After 20 years, you can retire with a pension. But then after 19 years and 11 months and 3 weeks or something, you decide to quit your job just a week before you can get your pension. What a fool you are. And so, similarly, my humble realization being a bhakti leader sometimes in Los Angeles and dealing with young devotees, we found an interesting thing that basically every devotee that we saw who had come, practically every one of them was like a mystical thing. They would have some dream of Srila Prabhupada in the beginning. I don't know if anybody noticed that. If you noticed that, Maharaj is a bhakti leader. I saw that at least in Los Angeles.
I can't remember.
And very powerful dreams. Really inspired devotees. Maybe not every single person, but so many of the devotees. And Prabhupada's there for devotees. And Srila Prabhupada is such a kind, caring person. We were speaking with Maharaj earlier, and we're telling a story about one senior devotee who Prabhupada gave some particular instructions to, and he disobeyed Prabhupada. And Prabhupada gave him money to go and open a preaching center in one country, and he didn't do it. And he went back to America, and he started preaching some strange ideas to the devotees that we should not wear tilak and not keep sikas. And later he left and broke so many principles and did so many terrible things. And when he came back to Prabhupada, Prabhupada cried. Prabhupada embraced him and said, I always love you. You're my son. So I think of that, and I remember that, and I think how devotees have done service. They've done so much book distribution. Ranjan Maharaj is telling us so many wonderful stories yesterday about Jad Bharat Prabhu and different devotees. Younger devotees who never met Srila Prabhupada, but they gave so much to Prabhupada, and so inspiring to hear about them. And don't think that's for nothing. Srila Prabhupada cares, Srila Prabhupada appreciates. We have that. It's like working for a company for 20 years and you can retire. But you should wait until that right time. And Prabhupada will come. Prabhupada will take care of those devotees. That's my conviction. The Prabhupada is very, very present. But if we try to just make Srila Prabhupada, if we try to limit him, he has so many different roles, just as each and every one of us. We're a son to our mother and father. We're a brother and sister to someone. We're a buddy to someone else. We're a student to a certain teacher. And maybe many of them have different nicknames for us. And they see us all in different ways. So also Srila Prabhupada can be seen in so many different ways. He's the founder of Acharya. He's a personality who's something like Jesus Christ, who's the founder of this movement, and it's full of awe and reverence, and he's a very powerful person, a very heavy person, and he's a person who gave us these books, he's a person who gave us this institution, he gave us the rules, and he gave us Krishna. But he's also a person. And when I've had the chance to speak with devotees like Jamuna or Brahmananda Prabhu about Srila Prabhupada and hear the stories from them, that touches my heart so very much. It reminds me in the third canto of the Bhagavatam, Lord Kapila speaks about being a drik. Being a drik means being a separatist. And he speaks about bhakti in 3 different modes of nature. Interesting, when he speaks about bhakti in the mode of goodness, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in a commentary quotes the Brahma Vaivarta Purana, how there's 3 different devotees in the mode of goodness. And one devotee wants to be free from his material desires. But that's saguna bhakti. That's not transcendental, just wanting to be free from material desires. Another devotee, surprisingly, there's three. I'm not remembering three. Anyway, another devotee, he wants to understand the mood of the Lord. But that's saguna bhakti. That's not transcendental. What is that? It's saguna bhakti because he wants to understand the mood of the Lord for his own pleasure. Just like sometimes a young boy wants to understand what a young girl likes, what kind of food she likes, what kind of movies she likes, not because he really cares about her, but because he wants to exploit her. So the motivation is something ulterior. The motivation is something selfish. And the third person is someone who wants liberation. And that's saguna bhakti. So once some devotees, they addressed Jamuna to Prabhupada. They said, Prabhupada, Jamuna, she's a separatist because she didn't want to stay with all the devotees. I spoke with Jamuna. I asked her one time, I said, what happened? I said, I read in Prabhupada, Lilamrita, Prabhupada would cook. Prabhupada would wash the dishes. They shared a bathroom with Prabhupada, and Prabhupada would wait in the line for his disciples to finish in the bathroom before he would go. And the men and the women were wearing the same cloth. They had this yellow cloth we've seen in pictures. And the ladies wore it like saris, and the men wore it like dhotis. And the ladies would give class, and the men would give class, and the ladies would lead kirtan, and the men would lead kirtan. And what happened? And it was a long talk, and she told me some very interesting things. But I could see that for her, Krishna consciousness was Srila Prabhupada. And when I listened to Kripasundar Prabhu speak and Naranjan Maharaj, you're not just speaking philosophy, but you're speaking something very special for all of us. You're speaking about your feelings. Because for devotees, their feelings are the most important thing. That when they saw Prabhupada, when they felt the separation from Prabhupada, how that would tear their hearts apart. So my revered spiritual master, he once spoke about Srila Prabhupada's disappearance, and he said that it is like a dark period. And he said, during a dark period, we cry for the sun, that self-illuminous sun, because you can't see. If someone asks you what the sun planet looks like, you can only tell them based on the mercy you've gotten from the sun. By the light of the sun, you can see the sun. So we can't see anything without the light of the spiritual master. And for so many of us who are coming, and we hear all these wonderful stories about Radha Damodar party and the early days in Boston and San Francisco Ratha Yatra, and wow, and so many amazing things. And devotees are just not as inspired today as they were then. Devotees were going out for sometimes 12 hours a day doing Harinam, and you can see photos of Vishnu Jana Maharaj with tape around his fingers with pennies that he taped to his fingers so that he could play Mridanga for 8 hours non-stop on Harinam. And my God, how were they able to do that? It was because of Srila Prabhupada. And as Naranjan Maharaj, you were mentioning to me yesterday, or mentioning to us, that sometimes devotees, they think that now we have all these problems, there's all these scandals, but none of these things happened during the time of Srila Prabhupada. It's not true. I was listening to a conversation with Srila Prabhupada the other day, and the devotees had come to Prabhupada. They were complaining about a senior devotee. They were complaining about a sannyasi because he was hitting on some of the other men in a kind of lusty kind of way. These things were going on at the time of Srila Prabhupada. Don't think they weren't going on. But because devotees had association with Prabhupada, there was some recourse. And when there was a great discussion, we've heard in Prabhupada Lilamrita that some of the leaders, they were saying that women shouldn't be allowed to live in the temples, grihastha men shouldn't be allowed to live in the temples, it should only be brahmacharis and sannyasis. And so the devotees, they went to Srila Prabhupada, and they asked him about that. And it's a long story, but Prabhupada gave some answer, and he told one person, you go stay in China, you go preach there. And Prabhupada fixed everything because he was present for that. So we want Srila Prabhupada in that way. We have so many controversies in our movement today, and everybody has so many different ideas and things. And in that regard, I think sometimes that it's not bad. I'm a human being. I have an opinion about Varnashram Dharma. I have an opinion about Lady Diksha Gurus. I have an opinion about this and that, and so many different topics. As a human being, I naturally do. But we don't have the good fortune of being able to go to Srila Prabhupada now and ask him directly about that. So I think to myself that my understanding is a relative understanding. And that's reality. That's sanity. And that I can understand. I have some opinion, but let me discuss with devotees, because we don't have the opulence of being able to go to Srila Prabhupada, but we should cry for that. My grandma said that during that dark night, when we can't see, and there's no one particular person, one acharya like Srila Prabhupada, where everyone can go and take shelter, then what should we do? We should cry in separation from Prabhupada. That's viraha. That's viraha utsav. And this is the gift of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Some acharyas have said that the 47th chapter, the 10th canto, the Brahma Gita, is the most important chapter in the Bhagavatam. It's one particular point of view. How can that be said? Because in that chapter we hear about the feelings of separation of Radharani and the gopis from Krishna. And no one could understand that chapter until Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came. And as Srila Prabhupada says in many places, that the mood of the followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is separation. But that separation, which is the highest thing, which is viraha, which means visesha milan, or rahasya milan, a confidential meeting. Externally, separation is there, but internally is union. That can only take place when there's some feelings of separation. So this is my humble feeling in this kind of festival, that I like very much to hear from the senior devotees, and I want to thank you for sharing your feelings, because that's the real treasure. If I can read books and things, but when I can hear from the senior devotees, when I could hear from Brahmananda Prabhu and Jamuna about their feelings for Prabhupada, it makes a scar on your heart. And it gives us some desire that we can also have association like that. And we should have faith in that. Because Srila Prabhupada is a very, very real person. So I don't want to ramble on anymore. I'm just doing this because Naranjan Maharaj ordered me to. Srila Prabhupada ki Vanchakalpadarubhischa Kripasindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Kripasindhu Prabhu, I think you fit this chair better than me. Hare Krishna.
Okay, what's next?
So we can just do a little kirtan, Hare Krishna kirtan, for the pleasure of Srila Prabhupada. I just want to mention something real quick. I marked that, I don't know what years, must have been maybe 67. There's many, many letters from Srila Prabhupada about separation from Guru, the disciples. I think that was the year that Prabhupada left New York and went to San Francisco and then went to India. Yeah. And many, many beautiful letters to Brahmananda, to so many of the devotees. And in one of the letters, I remember a very special thing. Prabhupada told them, he said that, don't think there's any separation between us. He said, you're there and you're chanting Hare Krishna, and I'm here and I'm chanting Hare Krishna. And because we're both chanting Hare Krishna, this is our connection, and we're together.